Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. Hey, welcome to our next episode, Don't Kill My Vibe, 3 Postures of Relationships. Hey, before we get started, as always, if you'd be willing to leave a review, that'd be really helpful to all the algorithms, things like that, and would just make it that much easier for people to find our podcast, find these episodes, and to be able to join in the conversation. So we would love that. We'd appreciate that, and we thank you for all of you who've done that. So welcome, Don't Kill My Vibe, 3 Postures of Relationships.
I love how that just rolls right out.
What's that? What part?
The don't kill my vibe.
Yeah, don't kill. Yeah.
Because
I don't know. How did you want me to say it?
I know in my head the song's playing.
Oh, was it?
You rolled it out.
I don't know
fast.
if I'm aware of the. I don't know if I'm.
It's
aware
Kendrick
of the song.
Lamar. Yeah.
Sing it real quick.
No, we're not gonna do
okay.
that, yeah.
I thought maybe you would just do it because we were recording. But I was wrong. Hey, so this episode stems from an article that you came across.
Yep.
And sent to me. We read through it and we were like, hey, we should do an episode about this.
Yeah,
right?
I'm excited about this one because it really made a big impact on me.
Yeah. So the article was from 2009, Michael Marlowe, I believe. I don't know. I feel like now
we'll link it.
You're the person that corrects me.
Yeah.
No,
you're good.
Okay.
We'll link it too so other people have access to it. So I'd be happy to do. Yes. Or I should say Josh would be happy to do that. I'll send it to him.
Yeah, pretend like we're linking anything.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously it's Josh.
Yeah.
All right, so this is kind of the idea of us taking a deeper look at relationships, right? We talk about relationships a lot. This is maybe looking at it from a slightly different angle, maybe a different lens. It's going to be talking again about the 3 postures of relationships. How is this, or is this any different than how we've talked about relationships before?
The postures of relationships, which I totally buy into this, it's the energy of the relationship. So it's the energy of the relationship that we share with people, the invitations we make to others, and the choices we see, and what actions we take. It defines the reason behind the relationship. So why are you in this relationship with this person? What is the energy or the exchange to that is beneficial in some capacity between the 2 people?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about like the energy that is brought to to any relationship in these, even within the 3 postures that we'll get to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really shifted my lens, analyzing relationships I have, and the postures that I hold within different, really close personal relationships and different capacities in my life.
We kind of talked about it last, I think our last episode, this idea of like not looking at stuff just in the world of education, right? But this is something that, it's not this article was all about education or how it works, but my gosh, how many ways does this apply, right? I think is what
100%.
We'll end up finding out. Okay, so there ultimately are qualities that are present in relationships that are universally held.
Yep.
Right, like they're across. It doesn't matter your culture. It doesn't matter where you're from. Like these qualities are there universally, is what Michael Marlowe submits, and this will be important as we break down the actual 3 postures. But before we get to that, the main 3 postures, there are these kind of qualities that we'll talk about within each of those postures.
Yes.
Man, that's probably a lot easier if you could see something in front of you. Just hearing it on,
hearing
it verbally.
Insert flow chart here
would be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's a big ask for Josh. He's gonna start putting flowcharts in. That's a lot. Okay, so I'll go through these real quick. We'll try not to spend too much time on them. But number 1 is attached versus not attached, right? So this is like in this world, like this speaks to how attached we are to our beliefs or ideas, or like the beliefs or ideas that someone else has who we trust. So it may not even just be us. It might be like, oh, we really trust this certain person. We look up to them, look at them as a mentor, whatever, parent, somebody that we really look up to, and the ideas that they have that we're either super attached to them or we're not so attached to them. So if you're not attached, it doesn't mean that you don't have any beliefs or opinions or things like that of your own. So don't hear that as like bad, but that you're actually open to influence and willing to consider other people's opinions or ideas. So there's ultimately, I mean, as you go through this, you hate to say there's not like a good or bad. There's ultimately one that sounds good and there's one that sounds bad for all of these, like as far as what you're bringing to these postures. So attached would be like, the more attached you are, the more likely you are to be like, this is just what it is. And I have a hard time looking outside of that. So that's the first one, attached or not attached. Filled up, or that you have space and openness. This was an interesting one to me overall, because I think that we're filled up as a culture a lot of times anyway. Like, we're pretty filled up as people. So how much room do we have to accept new information? So the first one is like, are we attached to the information that we have and like the knowledge that we have? This one is, do we even have the capacity?
Yeah.
Like, is there even any capacity for me to take something else in and consider something
and
else?
Aren't we constantly evaluating that education right now with all the changes and the ask and the demands?
Yeah.
As educators right now, that's huge.
Yeah. I don't know. We were in a conversation with somebody. I don't remember the exact situation, but like, you referenced that not long ago. You're like, actually, like, we are like, this wouldn't be the time to bring this up. I mean, I think you asked somebody and they said, yeah, this isn't the time. They couldn't.
Yeah.
Staff
There's
couldn't handle it
no
right now.
capacity right
Not
now.
because, not because the
we
staff
shouldn't talk
is, like,
about
in
it.
bad shape, or that it wasn't a good thing to talk about, but it's just because, hey, time of year and things like that, nobody's going to be able to actually receive this. We're all filled up. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so how much room do we actually have to accept information? Are we filled up, or do we have openness? We've all said things like, "Oh, I can't even think about that right now," like, right, or I'm at capacity, I can't do it. So this is that idea. Am I in a spot where I can even hear something, or whatever you're gonna throw at me? It's just overflowing the cup anyway. I have nothing left to give. Disconnected versus connected. So relationally speaking, this is kind of a big one. When we are disconnected, we see people as things, objects, or means to a goal, like at our worst, right? What's hard to come to terms with too, as we talk about all these, is that you kind of, all of us, it's not just like just evil people think of in these ways or land in these spots. All of us fluctuate on these continuums, right? So there are going to be times that we potentially are seeing people as like things or objects or a means to an end, and things like that. So that would be the disconnected part. And then the more connected side is when we're connected, people are held in respect and as equals. People listen and open up to one another when we're in this connected area. And again, think about this as like colors on a continuum. Like, there's any number of spaces in between. It's not just like you can only be completely filled up or completely open. You can only be attached or completely not attached. You can, to ideas, you can only be disconnected or connected. There's all kinds of a continuum. We fluctuate constantly throughout the course of a day, a week, a month, a year. Asleep and or awake. So if you're asleep, you don't really reflect on like your day, on your week, things like that, your interactions with others, or the impact of those interactions. You're just kind of floating through.
Doesn't that always happen when you have a new baby, right?
Yeah.
I like you say, like, time flies. Take the picture, take the video, and you're living, and you're like, I literally don't remember a lot of my second daughter's life early on, which sounds terrible, because I also had a toddler. I also had a 9-month-old.
Yeah, you're just trying to
right.
make it
Like
through.
you're just trying to. I was surviving.
And you're flat out exhausted.
Right? So I feel like I was asleep because we were just maintaining. But I think that happens a lot when people have babies.
Yeah.
The connection. Yeah.
So again, we're making a lot of assumptions. You're so focused on you that you might steamroll others. So that was kind of interesting. So if you're awake, you're going to be more just aware to everything that's around you. You might be paying attention to your own behavior even, and how that impacts others in real time too. You don't just stay defensive, and you own your own part in conflicts. Because again, it comes down to awareness. You're awake, you're perceiving things.
Yeah.
As
Sometimes
opposed to,
when people are in a bad spot, they're not awake.
Yes.
And they don't realize the impacts they're having on other people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when they're asleep and they become awake, they start apologizing, right? I'm so sorry. That wasn't.
Yeah,
right?
like on the back end, right?
Yeah.
That's not really how I wanted to be. I realize it now because all of a sudden they're able to reflect and have time to reflect. All right, and then the last one is one of these continuums is like controlling or flowing. So when we're operating in control, you might bubble yourself off so that you can't be influenced, or you might seek to control how other people think or behave. So it's not enough just to control how you think and behave, but you want to start controlling how other people think and behave too. I thought that was an interesting one. And then you might also push for people to follow a desired direction that you think things should go, right?
More of authoritative.
Yeah.
Authoritative leadership, I
Kind of
guess.
like, it reminds me of like a dictator, right? That was like the thing that came to mind when I was reading that. When you're flowing, more in that like flowing operating state, you're not focused on the need to control the things around you, and you're more, again, more ultimately open to see like different directions that things could go. So all of those things lead into these three postures. So that we're going to go over here in a second. So there's, no matter which of these three postures you're looking at, these things are influencing
components of it.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So let's break down the three postures then. What are they?
All right. I'm going to start talking about in wanting.
Okay.
So there's
wanting.
In wanting and knowing and in learning. Those are the three postures. So I'm going to talk about in wanting. As an adult, this energy is characterized by being so focused on our own needs that we drown out others and block opportunities for connection. We treat people as a means to an end. So we all do this. The movements within that characteristics are defining self through ownership. So, gosh, this one hits home for a lot of reasons. Social status, sense of belonging through things. You know, it's the idea of the American dream or keeping up with the Joneses.
Yep, sure.
We see this a lot in culture contacts, and we're all super guilty. I bought a specific car because I wanted to. You make fun of me about this, right? But you know, you think about that. Like, this is where like I've made it, right? I want this house because I made it, right? I did this. I accomplished my goals. So defining self through ownership, seeking transformation. If we buy this, we'll feel better. Right, we're a consumer inundated market. So if we go purchase this, it's going to fix all my problems, and that kind of sense. The last one is love and wanting, meeting your needs, financial, or this could be, you know, a sexual relationship with somebody or those kind of things. Being in love can be synonymous with being in learning with somebody. So I thought that was interesting because you think about when they talked a little bit about being in the idea of being that lust for a partner would be the in wanting, but actually being in love with somebody, which we're going to talk about, is being in knowing and wanting to know more about them. So they even did it like in terms of relational context, but it's really the energy and dynamics between people is the last one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the definition of being in wanting of somebody. It's the need of from what you can get from someone.
Yeah, and like that idea that then that's all those other things we talked about, like that's what's driving you is like what you're trying to get out of this, whether it's a relationship or like what you're trying to get out of life through.
We do this a lot with work. I mean, like, or like social climbers, right? I'm going to be friends with this person, so I get in friends with this person. That's the relationship benefit.
Is that how you describe what I do?
Yeah. No, that's not what you do.
No, it's the
opposite of what you do. But the socials are
socially interact with anyone at all.
Yeah, you think about, I have a connection with this a leader of whatever group, or a connection on this person that has some influence in some decision making. So I'm in wanting in this relationship because I see this as an opportunity for social status, or I'm going to get something out of this partnership. I'm in wanting from them.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is in knowing. This was actually a super common one, and it brings like a lot of energy. It's like a very energetic stance. In knowing is in its simplest form. It like this idea is like the doors are closed in this stance. Access to creativity, discovery, and learning is super limited. And the ability to sense new possibilities emerging, it can almost be completely lost. Like you can almost not see anything like that anymore. It might cause communities or even schools, right, to seek out and eradicate differences, demean or exclude others. So really in knowing, what it comes down to is that we're convinced that we know what is best. And we're tuned out to the needs of others or the impact of our behavior. So think about, again, I kind of mentioned like this dictator idea, right? It's that kind of idea as an extreme example. We are so convinced that we know what is the right thing to do, or we have all the right information, that we block out the other people's input. And that's like, I mean, you really put it on like a macro scale, that can be like a huge problem, right? Individually, it's a problem. Like it can really wall us off to improving ourselves and making ourselves better. Just in, I believe our last episode, we were talking about the idea of like blue dots, purple dots, right? Like what can you see? This idea that you may not be even open to the idea of somebody saying, hey, I think you're looking at something in a wrong way, like, or you're over identifying something. Like you would be so sure, that you can't hear from other people. And you might not, like, you're not thinking that you're doing this evilly, I guess, if that's a word, but you might even think like, oh, what I'm doing is best and it's going to help all these people. And what you don't even realize is, like, really, you've kind of shut yourself off and it might be harming others. Interesting example that was given is how we add to people's stories when we are in knowing. And I thought this was super applicable, right? Because we assume we know everything. So if someone comes like running into an office building is the example it's given, we might assume that they're late. Right? We don't know that they're late. Maybe they just really like to run in a suit and tie. Who knows? But we assume that they're late. And then what we start to do is we start to add to the story that we've made for them. So now not only is this person just late, but that they're probably late because they can't get their life together. And that they really aren't that respectful of people because they don't care about people's time. And they are just a mess. They maybe don't even know how to work technology super well because obviously their alarm didn't go off on time. And if they had their own car, they would have been here on time instead of being late by riding the bus and whatever. We've added all this stuff to this person's story that we don't know if any of that's true, right?
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
That's how shade gets thrown. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
What's super interesting though is what they say in this article is we're good at adding to the story. We're not good about going back and taking those parts that aren't true away. So for potentially ever, if we know this person, we've added this to their story and it's never been true.
Yeah.
But to us, it's true. And we see them through the lens of the story we made up in our own minds about them because we're so convinced we're right. We're stuck in this in-knowing kind of stance. Right. So I thought that was interesting. And how often do we do that just in general to
students?
Students, colleagues, you name it. We add all kinds of things to stories. They talked about maybe it's in an engineering place, maybe like, oh, like the people that development department's really good at this, but they always believe that, manufacturing's a bunch of idiots. Like they have no idea what they're doing, or maybe like in schools, like, oh, like curriculum, like they have no idea. They're so disconnected and, this school has no idea. Our school is better, whatever it is. But we do this. We make up these stories and add to stories, and then we believe them as true because we are so convinced we're in knowing. When we're in knowing, we're so stuck in that.
Or we sell that truth, right?
Sure, yeah.
Sell that truth. I think the unknowing part is it's like that plan A, B, and C. There's a time and place to be unknowing with things. I was thinking through this, but it's also a super dangerous place for organization to be in too.
Sure.
When you're not for some decision making, right? If this is our stance, they talk a little bit about that within business too as well with that. All right, you ready for me to go into the last one?
Yeah, I said everything I have to say.
Okay.
It was everything I know about in knowing.
Okay, well, that was enlightening. Thank you. The next one is in learning. In learning is the foundational posture which supports a person to grow and develop as a human being.
This is the one you want to be in.
This is the ideal posture, right? If you're any relationship you're in, they relate it back to like being in love or healthy marriage. You're constantly interested and curious about your partner, right? You're in learning, with them. So it's a natural human behavior since infancy. So they talk about this a lot, that babies are always in learning. Just, we talk about the brain development, those first, 18 months of life or 24 months of life, how it's just 1,000 days, right? They are taking on all this information. There's nothing that we can't stop babies from doing that, right? There's
Yeah.
trauma that has prevented babies from doing that, but naturally they are soaking up everything around them. We are designed to be in learning. The movements of being in learning are listening, starting with listening to ourselves, trusting your gut, listening to yourselves. We often drown that out. Better quality of listening will improve your relationship. I thought this was key because I often listen to respond and not listen to receive. So the better listener you are, the better the relationship you'll have. Inviting people to speak, key. The key word is invitation, being open to hearing people's stories. They talked about inviting people in instead of having an agenda when you're talking with somebody, but just authentically being, how are you? What's your story? How was your day?
Which we hear that a lot. You hear that like, don't listen to respond, don't have an agenda in the conversation. We hear those things a lot. And again, it's always easy to hear, say this kind of thing a lot, but it's easy to hear like on a podcast, right? It's easy to hear in a self-help book of some sort. It's easy to hear on a little, inspirational meme that's put out there. Like, but you have to actually practice
hard.
that. Yeah. You have to practice it.
Super hard. I struggle with this a lot. To be present, be open, be intentional. And this is the empathy step. If you look in the collaborative proactive solutions model, the invitation, the first part of the plan B for Dr. Ross Green's work is that empathy step. Really what we're doing is authentically listening to kids about the problem, inviting them to speak. Curiosity is the third one. I love this. My alarm system's protecting my belief is going off. I am curious why these ideas create an alarm. So we all have our pet peeves, and like something will happen and it'll just really make you angry or upset, and it doesn't seem like it's really not that big of a deal, but be curious about why that characteristic of somebody or the way somebody maybe didn't apologize the way you thought they should, or didn't respond the way that you thought they would, or didn't approach a topic. Be curious why that's triggering you.
Yeah.
To kind of start solving that, and when you're in learning about that, cultivate the curiosity, pretend, and we've talked about this in our crisis episode. We basically said when you're in crisis, even if you're not regulated, it's better for you at least to fake it.
Yeah.
And they basically say the same thing. Cultivate curiosity. If you're not curious, it's better for you to pretend that you are.
Yeah.
In a relationship. Finding learning partners. This is no surprise to us. We know we need a village. We survive we're mammals. We should be living in packs. We know about mirror neurons. So this is not a surprising fourth find for me. That when you have a learning partner, research shows that the more they have learning partners, the more rapid learning process, because you're constantly giving each other feedback and conversation about the learning. Kids will learn better, or adults, anybody, humans learn better when we are together. Yeah. Isolated independent learning projects are not as beneficial as if you could do collaborative learning projects, because it's all the conversation development that you'll increase the rapidness of the learning in the classroom. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay. So how do these are the three: in wanting, in knowing, in learning. And again, kind of what is driving us? Are we being driven by wanting to learn more about ourselves and others? Are we wanting to be driven by having all of the knowledge and knowing that we're right? Are we being driven by what we are wanting to get out of something? So how does this concept change how we approach our relationships with our students in our room, our colleagues, and our families?
I think being aware, I don't think any of the three are wrong. So just know that you're going to have different quality of relationships with different people. You can't be in learning with every person you encounter in your life. You won't have the capacity, right? As we talked about that. So as I was thinking through this, thinking about some of the most key important relationships I have, and I think the ones that are strongest and most I valued is I'm in learning with those people. Sure. Constantly. So I spend a lot of time with that. There are relationships, or you may even say, well, it's just a colleague. It's a colleague's professional relationship right there. The personal part's not there. So you may be in wanting with somebody on that. And then sometimes it's the relationships and knowing. So I think a lot of times we do this with families because we're the school and we have to be in knowing. We're telling them what needs to be happening. So just think about your dynamics with relationships and kind of think about if you're looking to improve the quality of the relationship, think about maybe how you can make some adjustments, identify maybe what state you're in with that relationship, and then maybe think about how maybe you could spend some time being in learning with that. to see if you can make some shifts with kids. Be curious, know their stories, listen to families, listen to administration, and follow some of those in learning characteristics. And I think you would improve the quality of relationships with any of those three things if you really were going to sit down and identify where those relationships are at. The article talked about educational institutions, K through 12, emphasize knowledge acquisition, competition, and testing. They confuse testing, counting, and grading with learning. We do this all the time. We talk about this a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And learning. And this, in turn, reinforces the energy of in knowing. So educational institutions classically are in knowing places. I think we're really trying to get to a spot where project-based learning, collaborative learning is taking place, because this article just reinforced all that research that says Bloom's taxonomy, all those things, that this actually, when we can get together and are curious and in learning with each other, we're actually going to see more rapid and improved outcomes for kids.
I think knowing like what the pitfalls of each of those three are, right? And making sure that if you are in a spot, let's say with a parent, like you're trying to pass on information, we are the school, we knew certain things and we're trying to pass those on. But understand like what the pitfall of being the one that's maybe a little bit more in the know and having more information will be. Like, so don't let yourself be shut off to response or ideas. Like don't get so stuck that you know the answer completely. Passing on the information, be ready to hear and learn. A similar thing with in wanting, right? You want to not be stuck in those pitfalls of like just using somebody as a means to an end. Understand that there's still humanity there and a person and how you interact with them. I first thing I was like, it should really lead us to wondering what kind of kids we're fostering in our schools, in our rooms, right? Are we fostering kids that are in wanting? Are we fostering kids that are in knowing? Or are we fostering students that are going to grow in learning? And I think that obviously we'd all say we want students that are in learning. We talked about that being like the natural kind of stance, and just being aware of what opportunities we give kids and how we give those opportunities so that it doesn't shut them off to being in learning. Because I think that being in learning is super important, right? And the longer we can keep kids there, the more likely they're going to turn into adults that are most often in a learning stance. So I think that's big. With other adults and with kids, really, hopefully, it helps us to ask ourselves which area we are operating in. Again, I just talk about awareness of ourselves a lot, and I think that's a key here as well. One of my takeaways was, I know people, we all know people that are maybe falling more in like the in knowing spot, and not only in knowing about other things, but then they also get shut off to learning about themselves as well. And I think that it's so important to keep learning about yourself, and to and you do that through relationship ultimately. I mean, you can do it with some individual work, of course, but I think you ultimately learn the most about yourself in community and relationship. And so what are you doing to learn about yourself continually, and to make sure that you're not just getting stuck in that in knowing spot? So awareness, I think, is big. And hopefully, again, regardless of the age of students you're working with, helping them through relationship with you also learn more about themselves. I mean, obviously, we're teaching content all the time, but to go a step further than that and help them learn themselves. And I think most teachers work hard at that, at all kinds of levels as well. And then lastly, like, what state are others in while we're interacting with them? It's kind of like when we talked about Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
In a different kind of way, but understanding that not everybody's in the same spot you're in. Not everybody has the same knowledge that you have. Not everybody has the same questions you have. Not everybody has the same areas of deficit that you have. And so understanding that everybody's in a different spot, and to be willing to maybe adjust yourself when you realize somebody is maybe in wanting or in knowing, to be like, oh, maybe I give myself a minute before we continue this, or this isn't the right time. They're filled up. This isn't the time to be able to like hit them with something new, or whatever it might be. They're not feeling like super open right now, and so rather than like get mad and keep pushing something, I should just take time, to kind of let them recalibrate and try to approach them in a time when they're more in learning themselves.
I was thinking too, just about when you want to be in learning with somebody and they want to be in knowing or in wanting from you, this is where I think we have some relationship conflicts or disappointment of
Sure.
outcomes. And it could be personal relationships, but I'm even thinking like school wide. Maybe you really were wanting to be valued in terms of decision making or to take something on, right? Because you want to be in learning with the process.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen. Maybe you were wanting that and you were just in knowing. And that's sometimes hard too. So I was thinking even like the different dynamics of it has to be both people wanting to be in that spot of that posture of that relationship. And I have found when you have both people in that spot in your closest relationships, that's why they're like that, because you're both in learning. And when you don't have that, then that's usually when it becomes more of an associate or, further out there. So I looked at it through that lens. Also thought a lot about Reggio Emilia in terms of
yeah.
early childhood education.
Kind of wondered if you'd bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it does. It's so similar of a thought.
Yeah, so Reggio, this leans really into the Reggio pedagogy, which I'm super passionate about. But with young children, we look at the teacher, the learning environment as a third teacher. We also look at the teacher as a learner with the students. You never come in as the expert because then we're in knowing. Reggio 100% promotes in learning opportunities for kids. We should be walking alongside them and figuring things out and all those opportunities. But this article really spoke to me. And I think this is how I ended up stumbling upon this article. I was doing some things for Reggio and those kind of things. And I found this article and I was like fascinating because it's relationship based, but really anchors back to that pedagogy of learning that kids are capable and that we should be in learning with them. And if you live in Ohio, the OTES rubric supports the facilitated into like project-based collaborative learning environments. That's what we're called to do within that learning environment. So made a lot of different connections. I thought it was an excellent article.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good. I thought it was interesting too, to think from like a slight shift of imagine when you've been the person that, that you knew somebody was relating to you in wanting or in knowing, right? Like they already knew everything, like they weren't really looking to hear from you, or they were just using you more as a means to an end in some way. They weren't seeing you like your humanness. They were seeing you as a, kind of an object, a means to an end, I guess, ultimately. And I think how do we come across to our students, right? Because if we are coming across to our students as we are in knowing and there's no other feedback, we know all of it, and they just need to listen. Or if we come across as like we're in wanting, we just want something out of them. All we're wanting out of them is just to comply, right? Or all we're wanting out of them is just to do well on this
State
test,
yeah.
right? But really, we don't give the feeling that like they really matter as a person. Well, like they pick up on that because we're humans. We pick up on those things. Even kids of all ages. Certainly, I think the older you get, probably even the more so. And this is why probably some teachers, I think, have a harder time. I would even say probably even more so as you get up into like the high school range. Like you have a hard time having good classroom management for one, but then also good classroom like environment kind of feel and good relationships with students, because they pick up on what you're really looking for out of the relationship, the teacher student relationship. And if it's you're wanting something from them or you know it all instead of you're in learning with them, then that's going to make a huge difference. And it's going to make a huge difference in output of what students actually do or how much they actually learn in the room as well. And I think that's important to know, the value of relationship, and not just because there's always relationship. So just because there is relationship of some sort doesn't mean that it's always good and healthy, right?
Yeah.
And so are we doing what we can to make sure that we are setting up the good and healthy kind of relationship, as opposed to maybe the more consistently in knowing or consistently in wanting kind of relationship?
Yeah, I've got a really good infographic, and it's called The Profile of a Modern Educator.
You do love a good infographic.
I do love a good infographic. And so I'll post that on our Facebook page when this episode airs, because I think it really talks about what it means to be in learning with kids and how this is the shift in education right now. And then we create these learning environments, boy, do we see way decreased behavior.
Yeah.
When kids are feeling like they're being told what to do, they have no choice. It's compliance, compliance, compliance. When we're in learning with kids, they are so invested. And we have a grade at our school right now that's doing this amazing like cardboard. It's so cool. The kids are making arcade games with it, and the kids, I mean, all super invested. They're in learning right now with that project. And we've seen maybe some kids you would think would have some behavioral difficulties during that time really be super successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
For that experience because they're in learning with the others. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
All right, what do you want people to walk away from this episode knowing?
Okay, I'm going to read the poem that was in the article because I thought this was a great epitome of reading through it, I thought it's a good lens shift in maybe how we're approaching traditional education in terms of a more reformed project-based learning or open-ended.
Okay, well, how about this? I'm going to go first then.
Go first, go.
Because I feel like it'll be hard to follow up the poem.
You can't.
Maybe,
can't.
right?
It's untouchable. Go ahead.
Okay. Now I kind of want to try. Now I want you to read the poem first. All right. So I'm always for knowing yourself well. I think I can never push that enough. Really get to know yourself well and get to know your students well also. And then one thing that I thought was helpful was a question there, because I feel like one of our pitfalls for sure is being in that filled up section of, instead of being, I'm going to look back at my notes real quick. Filled up versus having space and openness, right? I feel like we operate in filled up probably more in, US kind of world probably than maybe a lot of other things. And so one question that they had in here that I thought was interesting is to understand if you are filled up, ask the question, am I open to influence? And if so, under what conditions and by whom? And I thought that was a good question to be able to ask yourself, as you are going about your day. Like, are you so filled up that you're not open to influence? And are you so filled up that you're only open to influence by certain people? But I think it's a good question to kind of help identify, are you filled up and what does that mean? Maybe how can I work past that? All right, poem time.
Poem time. You ready?
I've never been more ready.
I've always wanted to do slam poetry. I'm terrible. I'd be terrible at it, but I love.
You've always wanted to do that?
Yeah, but
Look at me learning.
Well, you're in learning with me right now. I love watching like TikToks and things of people doing it. I think it's so cool.
So try to do it as slam poetry right now.
I'm not going to be able to pull that off. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not going to pull this off. And anyways, I'm going to do my best. Okay. So it's called The Little Boy by Helen Buckley. It says, once a little boy went to school. He was a quite little boy, and it was quite a big school. One morning when the little boy had been in school a while, the teacher said, today we are going to make a picture. Good, thought the little boy. He liked to make all kinds. Lions and tigers, chickens and cows, trains and boats. He took out his box of crayons and he began to draw. But the teacher said, wait, it's not time to begin. And she waited until everyone looked ready. Now, said the teacher, we're going to make flowers. Good, thought the little boy. He liked to make beautiful ones with his pink and orange blue crayons, but the teacher said, wait, I will show you how. And it was red with a green stem. There, said the teacher, now you begin. The little boy looked at his teacher's flower, then he looked at his own flower. He liked the flower better than his teacher's, but he did not say this. He just turned his paper over, and he made a flower like the teacher's. So how many times do we go through school? I thought about this, that how many times we go through school and we tell kids exactly what to do, and they're not in learning with us, they're in knowing, and it's really just a compliance-based instruction. Yeah. So I just thought that was a good example of that.
That's a really good one. Well, as always, we thank you guys for joining us in the conversation. Hopefully this helped you think about relationships in a little bit different way. Hopefully it gives you an opportunity to evaluate how you're operating in any number of relationships in your life, certainly at school as well, but maybe in your personal life as well. And keep that in mind, like the in wanting, in knowing, in learning. Take a minute and try to evaluate which one you're in. Read the article that'll be linked in there, and let's go out there and do the work.
Let's go do it.
Hey everybody, let's keep the conversation going.
Like and subscribe below and keep the comments rolling.